the old kakariki, but
What is kakariki?
oh, green, the green.
Kakariki? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, kakariki.
Yeah, right.
Kakariki, there you go.
So
Take
I mean,
note.
the green was the biggest one, but like I used to like taking certain pills, so you know it'd be like tremadols. Like I was such a sucker for tremadols, man. Valiums.
Pharmaceutical shit.
Yeah, like icky stuff, and it's like, man, and then for a little bit it was like LSD. I was really into that, and I probably got a little bit carried away sometimes, and but nowadays I'm just like, yeah, it's not really.
What were
my
your
thing.
steps coming out of those? Because those are kind of tough drugs and stuff like.
Yeah.
So what were those steps that you made? Slow steps. It doesn't have to be big, but what were they?
Not having it and not being able to get it was really, there was no other option but to stop. It's like, I'd like had this supplier, and then that stopped, and I was like, well. And so I had to go through the process of coming off it, and like, oh, do I subsidize it with something else, or do I start drinking more, or whatnot? So by like last year, I was doing a bit of this and a bit of that, and I just decided, I think it was mainly based around like the end of my last relationship, and I was like, you know what, screw this. Like most people, when that shit goes down, they drink more, they take more, and they start making more stupid decisions. And I decided to go the opposite way, which was to go sober, start looking after my body.
How hard is it to get drugs in Aotearoa? To find?
Oh, jeez.
How easy?
How easy?
I mean, it's pretty easy. Like, I mean, there were certain apps that you could use at the time.
Oh,
so,
what?
like, as I was saying, like, Discord was one way that you could get
Wow.
anything that you wanted, especially during that first lockdown. And if you were invited to certain rooms, chat rooms, then you could, anything you wanted was right there. You could have whatever you like. Wow. Like literally, it was just like, oh. It was like, oh my goodness, like who's watching this right now, And so that was one way of like, especially in lockdown, like getting through it. It was like, oh well, I can get all this stuff. Like, I've got all this money, I can't go out and spend it, so I might as well, do a sneaky driving trip and go pick it up, and yeah. But I think it's more about the people you're around, man. Like you're seen more than anything. So if you say you're a yuppie and you work up in a corporate office, they say getting the drugs is easy, but it's like it's actually not, because you have to meet up with some particular types of people in order to get it. But it's the stuff is out there, man. And yes, it depends what you want. It can be easy. I've heard a lot that meth is really easy to get nowadays. It was never really my thing, man, and I'm glad that it was never really my thing. But apparently meth is a lot easier to get now than marijuana, and I just find that rather disgusting. That vile, horrible drug is so much more accessible, and because I'm from Gisborne originally, and Gisborne became like the meth capital of New Zealand, where it got to a point where they were selling it, even in places like Aotearoa, they were selling it cheaper than marijuana, just because there was more of it. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. So I haven't heard much on what's going on with those statistics, but I'd like to think they're going down, because I want that shit off the streets, man. I've seen it ruin a lot of people, the old meth.
Do you guys think that it's when you bring legislation, when you bring the conversation to the table, that's when things start to move? Or you guys think that banning, prohibiting, making illegal is the way to go?
Well,
which doesn't seem to be working.
It doesn't. That's the problem. Prohibition doesn't seem to work. I mean, it goes back to the prohibition in America with, no alcohol. And look how well that worked. It just made the criminals more powerful. And it's the same thing with drugs now. Like like we can't prohibit it. Well, if you're the government, you can.
And people
on paper, you can.
People tend to do things that, when someone tells them not to do something, they tend to do the opposite thing and then want to do it more.
It's like, especially if you're a bit of a rage against the machine kind of person, and you're like, psh, fuck you, I'm gonna do what you tell me, bro.
Yeah.
And
who
then
are you to tell me?
Yeah, you gonna tell me what I can and
Which
can't
is
put on my body.
funny, isn't it? Because those guys would actually praise the opposite.
Yeah.
The ones putting themselves out there saying, let's bring the conversation to the table. They're asking for for talks.
Yeah.
But when you are when you're young and you don't know what's going on, you rebel.